Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, as promised, I'm finally sitting down to film my birth story of my first pregnancy and my first daughter, Sophia. She is almost 2 now. She'll be 2 in less than a month on May 10th, so I cannot believe that, but this story is from almost 2 years ago now. So I gave birth to Sophia when I was 16 years old. For those of you that are new and don't know that, I turned 17 shortly after. So yeah, I'm just kind of going to hop right into the story. I'm going to start with her due date because she was born a few days after her due date, and then I'm just going to talk about everything in between leading up to her birth. So I went into her doctor's office on her due date, which was May 8th, 2017. I was just going in for a normal 40-week appointment. I was getting my cervix checked, and I was 2 centimeters dilated that day, which I had been for 2 weeks prior leading up to that, so that hadn't changed. My doctor came in the room, he was talking to me, and then he mentioned me being induced, which I hadn't planned for, but I also was not against. So he did talk to me about being induced, and we decided that I was gonna schedule an induction date, and he kind of paused for a second and was looking over his paper, and then he said, "How about tomorrow?" So me and Gage kind of just both looked at each other, and we were, not that we weren't prepared, because it was obviously my due date and we were ready for her to come any second, but when he said like the next night, it was just a bit of a shocker because it was like very unexpected. Like we knew when she was going to come now. So he scheduled me to be induced on May 9th. I was supposed to go into the hospital at 8 p.m. So on May 9th, I was having light contractions all day, which I thought were Braxton Hicks, but they actually were early contractions, early labor, extremely early labor, and they were very light. I wasn't allowed to eat all day that day, so I was starving. I pretty much slept the whole day. Gage was still in school. Like I said, we were only 16, so he was in high school, and I was actually cyber schooled at the time, but I was graduating a year early, so my schedule was really different, and I was almost done with the year completely. So I was just at home. I slept all day, and then Gage came home. We packed up our car. We had already had our hospital bag packed for 2 weeks now. Gage and my family ate dinner because we were living with my parents at the time, and then around 7:30 I called the hospital and asked them if they had a room available for me, which they did. So 7:30 Gage drove me and my mom and himself to the hospital, and we got there at 8 p.m. and that's where everything started pretty much. By the time they got the IV into me and they got the monitors on me, I changed into my hospital gown or whatever, the induction didn't really take place until 10 p.m. So we were there for 2 hours before they even insert the pill. Around 10 p.m. that's when they insert the pill into my cervix, and funnily they actually couldn't find my cervix. Well, the first nurse couldn't, to where she had to insert the pill. I guess it was really high, so they had to send another nurse in who apparently had longer fingers, what they said, to find my cervix. She found it and she inserted the pill at 10 p.m. So my labor progressed pretty quickly, I would say. From that moment on, I started getting contractions right away. Like I said, I was having them all day that day, and they were actual contractions and not Braxton Hicks like I thought. But yeah, the contractions started. I would say they were really tolerable, but they were 1 to 2 minutes apart right from the get-go. They slowly increased. I would say after an hour they were probably 30 seconds apart, but still tolerable, and they lasted 30 seconds apart pretty much the whole night. I would say they were extremely close together the whole night. So around 11 p.m., an hour after they insert the pill, I asked to go to the bathroom because I was still in a decent amount. I wasn't in any pain at that point, where it wasn't tolerable, so I asked to get up to use the restroom, and the nurse came. She helped me up and everything with the monitors on me, and when I stood up, a ton of water kind of fell out of me, and I was a little concerned, and so were the nurses. So I went to pee and I laid back down, and they checked me, and they ended up finding out that my water had broken, but it broke from the top, so it was kind of all leaking down, and when I stood up it kind of all fell out. So if you guys have been pregnant before, you know you've been told that your water breaking from the top can be concerning and could be an issue, but because I was in a hospital setting, they weren't concerned. They just sent someone in right away to break my water with the little like balloon popper looking thing. So they just popped it and my water broke. And from that moment, I would say that was around 11:30 p.m. My labor progressed extremely quickly. Like that's where everything kind of started happening, because they were trying to wait for my water to break on its own. So that's why they hadn't broken it themselves prior to that. But when they found out that it was already broken from the top, they broke it right away, and my labor started instantly. So from that moment on, the contractions got a lot stronger really fast. They were a lot more intense, and I would say around 12, maybe 1 a.m. I think I asked for an epidural because it was really intense, and I was a little hesitant to ask because I was like, oh my gosh, I think my labor's gonna get worse from here. I don't want to ask for it too early and seem like, you know, like I can't handle pain, but I really was in a lot of pain. And when the nurse came in to check me at that point, I was 5 centimeters. So I did ask for the epidural at 1 a.m. I was 5 centimeters dilated, so I dilated 3 centimeters in like 3 hours, I think. And it took about 2 hours for the epidural specialist to come in. So I asked for it at 1 a.m. My contractions were speeding up. I was in a lot of pain, and he didn't come in for 2 hours. So around 3 a.m., I was in a lot of pain. I was extremely ready for the epidural. They sent my mom and Gage out of the room. Guy came in, and I got a really bad vibe from him to begin with, but I'm gonna get into that. This is where the part of my labor gets a little bit intense and unexpected, and was the worst part of my labor. So sorry if you hear Sophia. She's playing in and out of my room and her toy room. But the guy came in. I got a bad vibe from him to begin with. He was going to put the epidural in. He was a little bit frustrated with the fact that it took me a while to sit up, and that's really where I got the like bad vibes from him, because to get frustrated with me, I mean, I had to be a bit more dilated at that point. I was probably 7 centimeters by the time he actually came into the room. And it took a while for me to get up. He was a little frustrated with that. And then he put the gown on me or whatever so that he could put the epidural in. He put it in, and then I laid back down. But as I was laying back down, I ended up throwing up, which the nurse actually was still in the room with me, luckily, so she had a bucket, so I didn't throw up all over myself. I had thrown up previously in the night, which I forgot to mention, but I had thrown up once, like really early on into my labor. I was pretty nauseous throughout my entire labor, so at that point after he put the epidural in, I was a bit nauseous, and I just ended up throwing up as I was laying back down, which was fine. And after I threw up, I just laid down. The epidural specialist stayed in the room just to make sure everything was going okay, and he was gonna monitor my epidural to make sure the pain was being relieved. And about 30 minutes after, I would say, he put it in, he asked me if the pain was gone, and I told him that my legs were numb, but I could still feel every single contraction just as strong. And he was a bit concerned about that, and I was a bit concerned about that because it had been 30 minutes since he put it in, and it kind of just stopped like halfway up my leg. Like I couldn't feel my legs, they were numb, I couldn't move them, and I was still having all of the pain. Like it wasn't relieved, not a single bit. So he decided he was gonna check. He sat me up, and he realized when I thrown up, it must have moved the epidural out of place, and it was pretty much not even in my back anymore. So that's why it only worked halfway up my leg. So he asked me if I wanted to do it again or just not do it at all, which I wanted the pain relieved so bad at this point, so I was definitely gonna have him do it again. I didn't really have any fear of the epidural. I know that's a really big like thing, but I didn't have any fear of it. The needle going into my back, I would say, didn't really hurt. I wasn't really concerned about flinching or anything. I just knew I wanted the pain relieved. But because my legs were numb this time, it was even harder for me to sit up. So it took me a lot longer to sit up. And like I said, he was frustrated with me the first time. And again, he was frustrated with me. And I think he honestly thought I was lying about the fact that my legs were numb, because if my pain wasn't there, like I think he thought that my pain was relieved and I wanted another epidural, which obviously that wasn't the case. But the nurse was really sweet. I'm really glad that I had that nurse. She was really helpful throughout the whole thing, because I probably would have freaked out if it wasn't for her patience. But she helped me up and basically lifted me all the way up. He inserted the epidural again, by this time I would say it was an hour and a half after he inserted the first one. So it was an extremely long process for all of this. Gage and my mom told me afterwards that they were so worried in the waiting room because they told them it was only going to be 30 to 45 minutes, and now being almost 2 hours later, they were worried. But the nurse did say she called down to the waiting room just to let them know everything was okay, because she could even imagine how worried they were. But he put the epidural in again, he monitored me, and the pain was relieved this time, thankfully. So it took 2 hours to get the epidural in the right way and for all my pain to be relieved, and thankfully it was. After they put the epidural in, they did check me again, and this was at 5 a.m. and by this time I was 10 centimeters. So my labor progressed very, very quickly. From 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. I was 10 centimeters dilated. My doctor did not come in the room right away. I think he's a really educated doctor, and I really love my doctor, and I think he knew that he didn't want me pushing for 2 to 3 hours like some women, so he didn't want me pushing right away. So the nurses would come in, they would practice pushing with me, they would make sure the baby's head wasn't there, and they would teach me how to breathe and everything, and show Gage and my mom how they were going to hold my legs. And so since the epidural kind of relieved the contractions, I was really calm about it. I kind of would fall asleep in between each contraction, even though it was only like 10 to 30 seconds apart, but it felt like a lifetime of sleep at that point. I was so exhausted. Gage and my mom were really awesome. Gage was so calm throughout the whole thing. I have to mention that. Like, he did amazing. Like I said, we were only 16, so he was really calm. He was really helpful. He really didn't say much to me throughout the whole night, but he did hold my hand. I would say I squeezed his hand every contraction. But yeah, once the epidural was in, I was calm. We waited a couple hours. I would sleep in between the contractions, and then around 8:30-ish, the nurse came in and said my doctor was going to be coming in, so she wanted me to get ready to start pushing. She completely showed me how to push. She was turning the epidural down. I think she turned that down around 8 o'clock a.m. just because I had to be able to feel my contractions. So at that point, I was feeling them again, and she was letting me push through them because that would relieve the pain. But around 8:30, she had me get ready, said my doctor was coming in. He came in. He was extremely calm. He came in with another nurse. So I think there was my mom, Gage, my nurse that had been taking care of me the whole night, the other nurse who was the one that kept checking my cervix, and another nurse, and then my doctor. So 3 nurses, my mom and Gage, and they all came in the room. I was kind of moaning throughout my whole, the whole labor whenever, I was in pain. I wouldn't say I was screaming, the woman down the hall, that was screaming. She was screaming. I wouldn't say I was screaming, but I was definitely moaning very loudly. One of the nurses, the last nurse that came in that hadn't been there the whole night, when she came in with my doctor, she was telling me, just calm down, breathe through them, and her breathing, really helped me, and Gage was helping me breathe. And like I said, I was 10 centimeters for a lot of hours, and once they turned the epidural down, that's where it got the most painful. It was every 10 seconds. But the doctor came in, we started pushing. He was checking me out. He said the baby's head was right there, but we started pushing, I would say 9:15. It was a couple hours, so it had been almost 4.5 hours since they found out I was 10 centimeters, and we started pushing. I think it took me 5 pushes to get Sophia out, so it didn't take long at all, and I was so thankful, because I heard so many stories where women pushed for 5 hours at a time. My mom said I think she pushed 2 hours with me, and I was just not prepared for that. I just wanted her to come out, and I could feel her coming out. But when I was pushing, because I had the epidural, it was kind of hard to feel which area I was pushing out of, the front or the back. So I was a little fearful that I was gonna go to the bathroom in labor, but that didn't happen. I was pushing from the right area. It took five pushes, and Sophia was out, and I just remember that was the best moment of my life. I know everyone says that, but really, that was the best moment of my life. I would relive that moment every day if I could, because it's just so amazing. I don't know, to have a baby. Come here. Let me see. Yeah, come sit with me. We're talking about you when you were in my belly.
Well,
You want a drink?
Yeah.
Say hi. Say, I was in Mama's belly. You were in... Oh, yeah. You think there's a baby in your belly. But, yeah, guys. Sophia came out at 9:32 a.m. That's the time she was born. She was 6 pounds, 11 ounces, and 20 1/8 inches. So, she was a pretty tiny baby. She was pretty tall, I think, but pretty, light in weight. So, she was tiny. I didn't realize how tiny she was, when they put her on my chest, which was the absolute best moment in my life. I cannot wait to have that again. But I didn't realize how tiny she was until they cleaned me up and everything and took me back in the room. No. And then, what are you doing? And then, I realized she was so tiny, she barely fit into her clothes. So yeah, guys, that is pretty much my birth story with Sophia. I had a pretty easy birth. Like I said, it progressed so quickly. It's really a bit of a fog for me. I had to ask Gage some of the details of this before I told you guys, because I can't remember exactly how dilated I was or specific times or anything, but I do feel like her birth was pretty easy, although I did have that little epidural hiccup. But that didn't really bother me, because like I said, I was in so much pain that it didn't even faze me. I think it fazed the people around me more because they were worried about me. I just feel like the labor just went so fast after that. So yeah, guys, that is my birth story with my little baby, well, not so baby anymore, my toddler, Sophia. I can't believe that was 2 years ago that all of that happened. It feels like it was yesterday. I could relive that moment over and over again. It just doesn't feel like it was that long ago. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you liked hearing my birth story. I like videos like this because I like to hear other people's experiences and just compare them to mine and see the differences, because labor is just so different for everyone. That is going to be all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to give me a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down there so you can join the family. If you have any more video requests, I'd be glad to film anything that you guys like, because I love just listening to your requests and knowing what you guys want to see. So let me know down in the comments. And also let me know, if we had anything similar to our birth stories or your birth story, what went different, what went crazy. So yeah, let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys!